Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit about the team building process of what we're going to be working on in Office Hours 2.0. We're basically starting to build teams, and I'll start to propose what I'm planning, and then we'll discuss what we think of that and brainstorm a little bit related to that. Tomorrow, there's been a request to talk a little bit about Atem audio. So the Atems have audio in there. A lot of us don't use it, but some of us do, and we're going to talk a little bit about what those tools are and how to get the most out of them. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about USDZ. A couple of us worked on a project recently related to USDZ, and we're going to talk about what we found. There's a lot of effort put into figuring out a pipeline that actually would work. And so I think that we have found a relatively good one, and we're going to show you some of the results as well as talk about how to get to those results, which we don't know a lot of people that have figured that out yet on relatively easy platforms. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that on Wednesday. On Thursday, we'll have another Office Hours update. This is really to talk about what we've done over the last week. We've already made a lot of changes since the last Thursday, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what changes we're making and brainstorm again about what that looks like. A lot of November will be us talking about this because we're kind of making a big shift. Saturday is the education hour. If we don't stream that on YouTube, so you have to get on Zoom for that. And then finally, we're going to be on the Belfast method, back to Belfast at noon on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's jump into the questions. Liberty, what do we have?
Our first question comes from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Rupert asks, it seems Zoom events does not have live streaming features like to YouTube or any destination. Is this a problematic limitation?
Rotem?
No, I don't think it's a problematic implementation, because Zoom events is the main issue in the Zoom events is the registration and all of the people that coming, and then you will have their information. This is the platform. So it's like a closed event. You want all the information of the people that like participate on the event. So my opinion, you don't need it.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I'd say it's a limitation for people who would like live streaming to be built in to the platform, for sure. For folks that can do screen scraping and such, it's not.
Next question. Oops, sorry. That was me. I'll let you. I'll get out of your way.
Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware asks, what is your preferred method to display footage in a 16:9 project that was shot in portrait mode?
Go ahead, Jason.
My answer is the inevitable, it depends. That's right, it just depends on what I need to do with it, with what the resolution is, because portrait mode doesn't necessarily mean low resolution. You can shoot in very high resolution portrait mode and actually get a decent square out of it. But yeah, for the most part, the standard way of doing it is to put it right in the middle and then to blur it off in the background and just go with it that way.
I will admit, I think the blur actually kind of works. If you're going to get stuck with a 9:16, the kind of blurring it out in the background seems to work pretty well. Next question.
Jasmine Lee in Singapore asks, as a freelancer going on site to work on a hybrid event, what is in your COVID hygiene kit?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, for the sound world, for production sound specifically, you'd want to label everything with people's names on it before you put out their equipment, and also have a dedicated return basket. So you sort of have two different areas for equipment that someone would need to pick up and then return. And then, of course, masks for everyone, everything labeled. If you're handing out any equipment to people on site, put their names on it. Use a numbering system or a coloring system so that it's really clear on what they're supposed to pick up. That's it.
For me, I know that I carry enough food that I can, energy bars or whatever that I can get through the day if I don't feel like they're following enough protocol for food. So if things don't come separately packaged or something like that, I just want to know that I don't have to interact with it if I don't want to. Also, I got one of the Oakley face masks that I think David Brady had showed us. It's awesome. It's the most comfortable face mask I've had. Now, I will admit it's more expensive, but it's got replaceable filters on the inside. It creates basically a cavity around my face so that I don't feel like the mask is pulling up against me all the time. And so that was for some reason, a thing that bothered me a lot. And I went through probably 20 or 30 masks over COVID, and this is the one that I'm definitely settling on. I wanted a Dune one. I wanted to get the Dune version, but no one's making a good publicly available one. All right, next question.
Our next question is from Danny Law in Malaysia. Being that for some part of the world, it's hard to get a hold of a Behringer Flow 8, what would be an alternative in comparison to the features in a Flow 8?
Go ahead, Jesse.
I'd say something like the XR12 is kind of comparable. You don't have faders on the XR12. However, you can control it with like an iPhone or a phone or a computer as well. And you have just about the same, if not more, flexibility as far as routing, creating mix minuses, adding digital effects and things like that, USB audio recording. So check out the XR12. They're pretty ubiquitous around the world, and yeah.
If there's any way for you to get to an XR18, I would recommend it. I think that the XR18 is a pretty big jump up from the XR12. I do agree with Jesse, though. It's very comparable to the Flow 8. There's just a lot more feature sets once you get to the XR18 if you can stretch the budget. But the XR12 is a great solution. Next question.
Our next question is from Philip Oler in Katona, New York. Using an Atem Extreme ISO, I recorded a live stream with Supersource. When I look at the resolve timeline, the Supersource sections are black. I was using Mix Effect to create my Supersource. Is this a known issue or a bug with Mix Effects or with the Atem?
Go ahead, Jason.
All right. The answer is no, it's none of those, because Mix Effect is actually just a combination of things that are driving the Atem. The Supersource is not its own input, and it's not recorded as such unless it's your program out. The Atem, the Atem basically just takes that amalgam and it makes the Supersource, so it shouldn't be its own feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware asks, for those panelists that are working on framing their video for OH 2.0, what is your preferred method?
Go ahead, Ken.
I'm using the grid supplied by Chris Fenwick, so the circle and then with the two lines, even though saying that it's not on my system at present, but that's my preferred method of getting the framing.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
My confidence monitor has a 9-grid, which allows me to frame my eyes right on the line there, so it doesn't have to go over the ear or anything.
Yeah, I think that we're going to need to probably aim more towards Chris's framing grid soon. So a lot of us our heads are too big when you actually see them. Once we start going to the super sources and everything else, I think that we need to figure out a framing that is probably a little bit that our heads are a little smaller in frame so that they actually look natural in the. It's a different thing than what we've had up until now. But I think that as we start looking at super sources, I think it becomes more and more clear that we need to. I think Chris's framing guide is about right, and so we should probably keep on looking at that process there and trying to fit our heads into that process. All right, next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas asks, the Virtual Events Institute says one of the most profitable growth areas for events is community building. How can the profitability of community building be measured?
I think that there's a couple different ways. I mean, obviously there is people could pay for the community is one way to do it. But really you have to look at it as a long-term goal of you're going to see growth sales. This is a lot of community building, and I come back to farming a lot, but when you talk if you had a hunter-gatherer talking to a farmer, and they'd be like, you're doing a whole bunch of work in that field, and where's the rabbits? like where are the rabbits? You're like I have rabbits, I have berries, I have all these things, that I have them right now. And the farmer would be like, well, wait until the fall. It takes a little bit of work, it takes a little bit of water, it takes a little bit of growth, everything else. And so a lot of times with marketing, especially with branding campaigns, you have to really think about it like planting. Like you're going to put some stuff in the ground and you're not going to see it immediately. You might see it in the fall. You might see it in a couple of years. If you plant an apple tree, you got years to wait. Avocado trees, 2 or 3 years before you start seeing something come out. But it's a much more stable way to live. So let's be clear. Like everything around us was because farmers started farming, not because of hunter gatherers. The hunter gathering is an inefficient process. So the transactional way that we've been kind of running marketing for the last little bit of time is people are pushing back. Like they're pushing back. People are opting out. It's starting to kind of strain under the pressure of people not wanting their privacy to be taken, but their sanity. It's like I'm just constantly being bashed about things because I've come to the belief that it actually is worse to get ads that are aimed at you. People think that that's more convenient, but it means that you have to make a decision all the time because it's actually something you're interested in. When it's ads you don't care about, you can ignore them. When they're ads that you actually care about, I have to think about not clicking on the Sweetwater ads, because I'm like, oh, that looks really nice, and it's a distraction from the rest of my time. And I've gone from thinking, oh, it's kind of fun to see all these cool things that Sweetwater sending me, to being kind of angry about it, and that I don't want to have to think about that. I don't want an extra cycle applied to the ads. And so I think that people are going to keep on, when they start really realizing that impact, they're going to start pushing back. Go ahead, Rotem.
There is a lot of way to monetize communities. And if you look at YouTubers, they are monetizing. It's a community. They have they can do inside commercials. They can do the before and after commercial YouTube. They can do paid gigs for companies if it's something they believe in, and so on and so on.
Yeah. Good. Jesse?
Yeah, well, the way to track if something is profitable in the events world is ticket sales, and it's really hard to predict those things as time goes on because people are just so last minute as far as buying tickets, it feels like nowadays. But I think some business models include the flexibility to have experimental communities and supplemental communities where the plan is that they might not necessarily make money, but they're supportive of the overall goal of the organization. So those I think are really great and refreshing to see some of those communities like this one, which it's not. It feels like it's not designed after making money, but it's experimental and educational and really great. So thank you.
Go ahead, Liberty.
And just even thinking about, I think even as we look at the profitability side, what this is going to force us to do is go back to, are you really solving a problem, whatever the event is? And you pointed out earlier, Alex, when you said the marketing world is looking at that sales funnel. So you are trying to reach this audience, but really you're trying to reach that your 1,000 fans. So just kind of throwing that in there because it just makes a big difference when you really get that pain point and you really provide the event that people are looking for. Community building actually isn't that hard. Therefore, then the profitability part is not that challenging.
Yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I always tell people beware that what Liberty just talked about was a sales funnel. It wasn't a marketing funnel. And that when the marketing team get obsessed and measured on the sales funnel, they lose the point that some percentage of their business, maybe 20% of their budget should be spent managing their brand, as you described. And I would tell you the best way is the create content that causes a community and you'll become part of the conversation. And that should be 20% of your marketing spend. Don't get caught in the funnel because you'll never prove your value that way.
There's so many places that community makes a difference. One of the things about it is that you're educating your community. So if you have a place for people to learn, they're learning how to use your product, they're learning about your product. So there's, once people know a product, they're far less likely to go somewhere else because they already know it. They don't want to do it if they're getting a lot out of it. My brother runs a membership for his golf course, so you can actually pay a small amount of money relative to golf to have a membership, and you can there's all this time you can golf basically for free, during the middle of the days where it's not as where there's not as many people who want to golf on the golf course. Now, what that's done is people feel very connected to that golf course. It's their golf course. That it's something that they feel part of in that golf course. And number two is when you have that kind of opportunity at that golf course, you don't go to a lot of other golf courses. And so you golf there because it makes a lot of sense, and people golf every day and they feel very connected. And so I think that community building makes a big difference, in that process, and so I think that, when you are educating folks, when you're building that connection, if you look at like Sound Devices is a good example. John Tatoulis has spent, decades. He goes to hang out with people that are using his products. He underwrites, events that, or Sound Devices would help, not underwrite, but help with events that are just help with the community, and there'd be no branding. Like there's nothing. They just want to make sure it happens. And then he's around him. And when you go to a sound, like a sound recordists get together at NAB, John is a rock star. And people buy it not just because Sound Devices makes great products, but because they're really connected to the company. And I think that is it makes a huge difference in what happens there. Next question.
Our next question is from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. How did Doug Ferguson's MMA production go this weekend?
Go ahead, Doug.
So for those who don't know, I put on and produced an MMA show. We streamed 2 different times that night. The first part of the first 5 bouts were free on YouTube and Facebook, and then the second main card was a pay-per-view event. And what I did a little bit behind the scenes. I set up a camera in the truck, and then I routed our comms to a Zoom meeting and let people see the live event as it happened. And so thank you, Bo, for the question. And I just wanted to open it up to this community to see, a live event happen live, and what happened live. And the great thing was that the client was very happy. That the show went off okay. I was really, really nervous about the TriCaster because it had been crashing on me leading up to the show. And so so it did not crash, although it did a couple wonky things during the show. I would hit play on DDR1 and DDR2 would fire. So I had 2 audios going at the same time a couple times, which I have no idea about that. And then we were playing with fire a little bit because our feed was going into the Jumbotron inside, and there were about 3,000 people live watching it. And there were times where we had to play our videos with audio into the venue. But most of the time we were getting a mixed feed back from the venue because they were feeding us like the ring announcer audio, and they had some cage mics set up. So we had to really coordinate with comms on when we were playing our video with audio so that they would turn theirs off. But I saw that a couple people did get to watch, and I thank Mr. Preto for kind of managing the back end of things. The idea, it was our first time to do this, but the idea was to create a show and to have multiple angles in the truck. But we only got one angle, but I did show the multi-views so that you could see what I was putting into preview and program, and you could see all the cameras. We had 7 cameras. We put one into the truss in the lighting above the ring. That was really a cool shot. That was our first time. But for those who did watch, know that this was my 3rd time ever directing MMA. And I'm not an MMA guy, so I'm still learning the sport itself. And there's always room for improvement. My wife runs the graphics, and a couple of times she screwed up, and it's hard to like play director of graphics when it's your wife and like, hey, you flew the wrong graphic, but then I screwed up too. But anyway, it was a great event, and hopefully we can do it again and let you guys see the behind the scenes view of that. So it went really well.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for making that available. John?
So what's really funny about this is Chris and Doug have been talking about this for months, that we ought to do this. And then when it came time to do it, Chris was nowhere to be found. And so Doug he had to recruit me. And it was a 12-hour day. Doug, I'm sure worked 20 hours that day. Having the truck view and listening to the comms and his multi-view is extremely educating. So we've got some footage of it. Hopefully Doug edits it together. But if we do it again, I encourage everybody to see. Doug, you did a great job. Stop yelling at the graphics operator.
Next question.
Philip Oler in Katona, New York asks, use an Atem Extreme ISO for a live stream. I use the second output to feed confidence monitor of a PowerPoint deck, which was input 3 on the Atem. The monitor was getting full mix from Atem and not just the input 3, which had videos also. Mix minus possible?
Go ahead, Jason.
I need the reverb effect here. No. You have very little control on the audio going out of an ATEM, even an ATEM Extreme ISO. This is what the SDI switchers are for.
Well, I do think that you can still mute the other. You're talking. I mean, so I don't know if the you should be able to.
But he wants a mix minus. I mean, there is only one mix minus on the ATEM Extreme ISO, which is the headphone jack. Like that's it.
So they don't have the mix minus setups like I haven't tried to do it with an Extreme. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention as well. Just turn off other inputs. If you have just one dedicated input for audio, on the ATEM, turn those off, turn them down, and that should be the only thing you're sending to program.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, essentially I do the same thing. I just solo the Mac M1 that I'm using as a mix minus just by virtue of the way I have it set up, and it turns everything else off so I don't get a feedback loop.
Next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina asks, what is the pipeline required for a Panelist HDR camera to maintain HDR through Zoom into YouTube?
Nothing. So they don't have to do anything other than all of us have to keep on tweaking. You'll notice that in the regular Zoom that you're probably watching right now, I look a little less saturated, and I'm playing with it right now to see how I look on the HDR. So you don't have to do anything on it. We're actually stretching that in an FSHDR. Now, one of the problems that we have is that we're stretching that for everyone. So it's the program out of the constellation goes through an FSHDR and then is up converted and for the most part, it's actually working pretty well. So we're taking just Zoom 709, 8-bit, and just bumping and promoting it to HDR with the FSHDR. Now, there's a bunch of things that we'll talk about in the future about what makes that work and not work. So, but one of the things is a generalized solution because it's HDR10 and it's not per person. It's a generalized solution that's kind of working. Some people look great, and some people like me not so much. So anyway, we're going to have to keep on working on that. I do think we're going to keep on designing. We're going to end up designing how we light ourselves and how we put things in based on the HDR as we watch ourselves. I know I'm taking notes of like, oh, I'm gonna have to think about this and I'm gonna have to think about that, and so, but we don't want to push too hard right now as far as our corrections go, because I'm still playing also with the settings inside of the FSHDR. So there are basically I can set high points and mid points and a variety of other things in the FSHDR. Those may not be correct yet. And so what we have to do is I'm going to take the recording. I'm going to be kind of working with the recording and then running it through Resolve and then gathering the pieces that I need. So we'll talk about that too. But I need to figure out what our averages are and what our actual white points are. I do think our white points are pretty close to 0, but I think that we have to kind of figure those things out. So anyway, we're still working on what those solutions will be. But nothing is needed on the far end to do the transformation. Now, in a perfect world, we would have 5 FSHDRs because they take 4 inputs each, and we'd pass them all through, and we'd color correct each person for the show. Maybe someday. It's not. I'm not saying that we won't do it. I'm saying that I just don't have the $35,000 to do it yet. So anyway, next, no, go ahead, Mitchell.
I've just got to promise not to wear my bright orange shirt in the future.
No, it looks good. This is the funny thing about it is that some things that you think would look good don't look good, and some things that you didn't know would look good look really great. And so, so like spotty, very saturated colors. So Rupert and John Preto and Jim Hankins look good. We haven't cut to David yet, but I'm gonna. Oh, I can see him. Yeah, and the red sign behind David looks really cool. So some things like that have that contrast pop out. And so those are the kind of things that if you look at the grid, especially, you'll see kind of these really bright areas. And again, I realize that as it's creating a whole new set of challenges for all of us. Like we thought that all the cameras were working, and now we're like, well, maybe we might want to keep working on it. So anyway, we're just going to keep playing with it. All right, next question.
Our next question is from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis. It's day one of an audio video install at my synagogue. Obviously, the bid and equipment are already set. What can I, as the rabbi client, do to aid in the successful, efficient installation?
Go ahead, Rupert.
I'm reading this as like you've got a team on site, contractors working, whatever. So a few things, logistics. Make sure they've got places to park, make sure they can get in and out when they need to, make sure they can get access to the areas that they need to get into, keys, ladders, not your ladders, but if there's access or spaces they need to get into, make sure they can do that. Make sure you establish a good line of communication with whoever's in charge in that group. You can call each other, answer questions, stuff like that. Set the expectations of completion, whatever it is, and make sure you understand what the sign-off procedure is going to be or the acceptance. And then hospitality, drinks, snacks, whatever, just a bit of creature comfort to just help things along a little bit.
That's great. Jesse?
Yeah. Additionally, consider your IT department, because the modern AV world is really based on networks, and buy those folks some pizzas, because they're going to really have to collaborate with your team to make it all work well. So really get them hand in hand and let them track the progress of what you're up to. And also, if you haven't already considered who the end users will be, I just did a system recently with QSys, and there's a panel for basic users and technician. So if you have users that are really going to use the system in a basic, limited way, really consider that, and that's really commonplace with houses of worship and things like that. And so, bring those folks in on any decisions about how they're going to use the system, and simplify it from the control perspective if you can.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Watch those bid specifications. Somebody has to have that 10,000-foot view, so keep an eye on that. And make sure that if you do have questions, now is the time to ask them. Because when it's all said and done and the crews are done and you sign off on the job and you find something you missed, it's a lot harder to get them back.
Next question.
Our next question is from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. What's the process for managing both HDR panelist feeds and non-HDR feeds for the HDR stream? Are non-HDR feeds uploaded into HDR first?
And the answer is yes. So we're up right now. We're moving everything up to that. Now, where things get a little bit more complicated, right now we're taking the program, and this is mostly just for us to see how this all works. So there is a problem with this process, which is that we're going to end up having to do something with the MEs, because we're going to have everything happening on another ME, because when we want to do playouts in HDR, we're going to need to be able to play things that are already at 1,000 nit PQ going into the system, or HLG, and so that's going to have to be on another. It's going to have to be on another ME in the constellation, which we haven't done yet. And so right now we're just kind of testing this process, because we're not mixing and matching. Everything is 709 right now, in 8-bit. But the goal and why we built the system the way we built it is so that we can play content out. So if I want to do a play out, or all of our graphics that we show, everything else can be in HDR. And so that's the next step for what we're doing. And we're still working on some of those bits and pieces. Next question.
Our next question is from Ray Franklin in Mount Dora, Florida. What is the name of the battery operated lights Alex uses on the road? Is there another option if they are not in stock?
Go ahead, Ken.
Alex will give you the name of the lights he uses, but to answer the second part of your question, Aperture have brought out a range of lower end P60 lights, which are perfect for travel. And actually, I'm looking to replacing some of my bigger over the top lights with that range. It's the Amaran P60 range are the lights as an alternative.
Yep, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the ones that Alex uses on the road are these PavaTube 6Cs in stock at this little store up north down the road from me.
Yeah, and those 6Cs work great. I'm really happy with them, actually. They've got about 2 hours of battery, so they can't quite last a whole show, but they're pretty close to it. But they take USB-C power, so you can just, and they, what's interesting is they take USB-C power, but they don't want a lot of power. They actually won't charge. It's something I discovered. So you really want just the old-fashioned USB-A to USB-Cs to get, to get into them. But I'll take like a little, one of those little 6 outs, and I can put it there and just run little cables out to all of them, and it works really well. I have moved from the hue lighting. I was playing around with them, and I ended up with a little bit of flicker, and so I moved to the Aperture. I think those are 7Cs, which are and that's what I'm using. I didn't use it on the last trip because the fixtures didn't work, but on standard fixtures, I'm replacing those with the 7Cs, and then using these 6Cs from Nan. Yeah, so. I'm hearing something going on. All right. Anyway, let's go to Mitchell.
Yeah, the parent company that makes the NAN lights also makes another alternative tube light. It's called LEDGO, LEDGO, and they're pretty good. I've used them a lot along with the NAN lights. Their quality control on both are excellent.
Next question.
Our next question is from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. Have you ever received compromised footage from a client, and after rescuing the project, the client becomes upset with you?
Yeah, that's go ahead, Mitchell.
If I've rescued footage,
Anyway,
they'd
go
be
ahead.
delighted.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
It's an interesting question because nowadays I'm getting a lot of Zoom footage where different things are being done that are incorrect, and it causes me agita down the line. Virtual backgrounds, never use them. Wrong settings to get the isolated outputs. It seems that you do a lot of fixing where people think that Zoom is a locked-in thing that you just press a button and it magically outputs what you want. It's not the case. So I'm kind of motivated to create a quick and precise YouTube document that says, here's what you do to get the best quality video. Don't try to fix it on your end. We'll do that for you.
Sorry, I have something. Go ahead, next question. Sorry, I got something coming out of one of my speakers. I can't figure out why. Go ahead, next question.
Our next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. If you are going to do events on site and remote, are you going to set up the same gear at home, remote, and you're going to set up the same gear at home, then pack up to load in on site, then set up again at home, same thing over and over, or do you have separate setups?
Go ahead, Jason.
Always separate setups. I gave up on that kind of back and forth switch years ago.
Rotem?
My budget don't allow for 2 setups. So yeah, I'm turning everything up, putting it on site, turning everything up, putting it back home.
Next question.
Our next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. An article in The Atlantic describes it as silly to commute to an office to open a web browser and join a video conference, saying that calling this a return to work is disingenuous. At what rate might people realize this?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, sometimes it makes more sense to work in a controlled space like an office if the home environment doesn't work for you. If you have ton of kids or a noisy place, or your audiovisual setup at home is not ideal. So I think there might be some return there for practical reasons.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, this kind of really sticks to my heart. I've been doing remote since acoustic modem days, 300 baud. So I'm a firm believer in remote working where you can, just because it's so much more efficient. It's kinder to the environment. It's safer in a number of different ways. So yeah, to Jesse's point, there are always going to be scenarios where working in a controlled space is going to be helpful. But I'm hoping this is the impetus necessary to get people to start pushing back for those types of work environments where it just really doesn't make any sense to drive for an hour and a half, into work through the snow, through the rain, uphill both ways, just to get something done, like join a conference.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I agree. I've been working a lot from home, and in fact, my setup here at home is better than my one at the office. But I do like to go to the office when I know I'm going to do a bigger event, just because I'm guaranteed that the doorbell's not going to ring and the dogs are going to go completely bonkers. So there's something about having better gear and a dedicated quiet space. Like, we've invested in the F-Zorb sound panels and things like that make it super quiet there. So it's just a better space.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I agree with Guy completely, except my home studio, my biggest competition is the refrigerator downstairs. I'll put some weight on it.
Yeah, I think that the big thing is that the companies that have really gotten ahead of this are like Dropbox. I think they're probably the perfect example of a company that just says, here's the deal. We're going to give you $5,000 to build up your home if you want to do that. We're also going to give you office space that's available to you if you want to come in. So the thing is that you can come in if you want to, but you don't have to. And if you want to have meetings in the office, you can do that. So I think that fluid, allowing their employees to make the decision for themselves as to what it is, and the managers. I mean, there's some things that you can't do at home, but those things are, I think, much less than people think. And I think that a lot of the problem people have is that they're unequipped for it. I think that one of the things some friends of mine that have moved out of the Bay Area in the last 18 months. One of the big things they wanted was they had little apartments, or little apartments or very small condos in the Bay Area, which when they sold the condo, they were able to afford a much bigger house. And one of the big things they did was they had a much bigger house that they now had a studio in to join meetings. So they're no longer cramped into a small amount of space that they could afford in the Bay Area. They're in a house that's 2 or 3 times the size I think in one of them, in the case of Oklahoma, so it was near all I know is it had Google Fiber. so that was, and what's interesting is that is the number one thing. All my friends that have left, the number one thing, they won't move anywhere they can't find 1 gig connections. It's so I think that's been the real driver of where they go is where they can get internet. But I do think that the chain reaction of what's happening right now we're not going to see for another decade. But I think that the idea that we're all going to come into an office is over. Like all, I want to say all, like there's, I think 30, 40, 50% of the people will be working from home in 10 years, and so, it's not going to be, anybody who isn't in a service industry where they have to be there, it's going to keep on spreading out because people are going to just stop working for the companies that don't let them do that. I mean, there's an enormous stress where companies can't find people. And so people have the ability to say, I don't want to do that. I'll pick a job that I can. And so I think that's we're in a kind of a unique situation that is going to continue to go down that path. Next question.
Our next question is from Alex Golner in London, UK. What do you think of this lens for full frame cameras and that generates a depth map by dividing the sensor into 9 shots that capture content from slightly different angles? And he includes a link.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh man, I was looking at that since he posted it. It is supremely cool, and at the same time, my immediate thought is, well, no wonder that depth map on their site is terrible. A lens without distortion or a lens with predictable distortion, like all the way across the 9ths of the lens, the kerning alone could really mess with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that the big thing is edge detail. And it's just very, very, very difficult to get edge detail without enough parallax, and you're getting very little parallax from that. So it is slightly different, but I don't know if it's enough different without, I don't think it's going to be better than the LiDAR that Apple produces, and theirs isn't perfect either. Although I will notice with my 13, taking pictures yesterday, the live view, don't be discouraged by the live view on the 13. The post of your photo and the live view are totally different. I thought it wasn't working at all. I was taking pictures of my daughter in her costume, and it just looked like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. So I kept on taking the photos over and over again, trying to find a place that didn't blur in. But when I saw it in photos, I had just a whole bunch of photos that worked.
Have you pulled video into Final Cut yet, Alex? Have you tried that yet? It's so cool.
Yeah, I haven't yet. I know that I've been excited about it. I've talked a lot about it, and this week is going to be the week that I finally get to do that. So I'm excited. Next question.
Our next question is from John Foltz in Selensburg, Pennsylvania. AWS question. If you start an instance, then turn it off, do you have to reload everything, or can you just turn it back on?
And go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's two types of storage. One is called an ephemeral, and the ephemeral drives do go away. So if you put something on an ephemeral drive, when you shut down, it'll be gone. But the regular storage that when you install apps and things like that, your C drive essentially is going to be there, but it's small. And if you want to make it larger, you can go ahead and make that bigger in the back end in your control panel. You can make it as big as you want. You can also just create volumes, and you can see here that you can have SSD drives, you can have cold HDD drives, HDD drives, magnetic drives, all kinds of different volumes are available in the back end.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, so just like Guy says, that's, when you shut down the machine, that's exactly the case, or stop it. That's sometimes the terminology in AWS. If you terminate the machine, then that will queue it for deletion, and I think there's an option there to delete the storage at the same time. So just want to watch out for that. And if you are shutting your machines down, just watch out for your account settings or what payment tier you're on, whether you're going to pay for the storage that is going to continue even when the machine is shut down.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think both Guy and Rupert are correct there. And one thing to keep in mind also is you can have a instance that has a mix of storage types, and so you have to be cognizant of that. That if you stop an instance, because normally when you have an instance store, so that ephemeral storage doesn't. So I recall you don't have the option to stop it. But if you have a instance that has mixed storage types and you stop it and you stored something inadvertently on that ephemeral storage, you'll lose it, which would be a sad day.
Good Guy.
And another slick thing that you can do is connect an S3 bucket. And so Jonas and Chirag developed a script that some of us are using where we connect our S3 buckets, so then across all the machines and across different data centers. So if there's certain elements for a show, we can pull those back up. And if something happens, we can just grab that stuff. But I did make the mistake once of putting some footage on an ephemeral drive and was kind of surprised my first time when it went away when I rebooted. So careful. Good question.
Next question.
Our next question is from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. I have a Zoom meeting in a relatively loud environment in front of me. What noise cancellation USB headset does the panel recommend, or is there a better solution?
Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry, I'm Jesse.
Not a headset, but a great mic you can try is Audio Technica AT2005 USB. If you want to hear it, you can check out the 10% Happier podcast. One unique feature of that one is that it has XLR and USB. So you could potentially run it into a mix pre or something like that with noise cancellation, or into some software like Audio Hijack and do a bit of noise cancellation there. But it's a dynamic, you've got to get it close to the talent in order to pick up. So there you'll get rid of some background noise.
Go ahead, Jason.
There are two parts here. If he actually means a loud environment in front of him, the two parts are you need to be able to isolate your ears so that you're only hearing what you need to hear. And then the second part is you need a microphone with good off-axis rejection, which means if you're not right on it, it gets rejected. So the volume, the source that's directly in front of you is not going to come in through your highly directional mic.
Yeah, and that's where mics like the Heil PR40 or an SM58 can get you a long way down the path. These aren't USB mics, but they are able to do that. Now, you didn't give us a price, so I'm going to give you the better options. So the other option is using one of the mix pre's has with noise assist. You can take, if you match up an SM58 or a PR40 with a mix pre, you're going to be able to take a lot of that noise down. The more expensive version of that, of course, is the Cedar. Just so you know that a Cedar exists, it's a super expensive box, and it does just I don't know how much better it is than Noise Assist, to be honest. But that's another. At this point, I feel like the Cedar actually is a little bit more digital when you turn it way up. I feel like Noise Assist is a little softer, but I do think Cedar can be a little bit more effective on some hard to get rid of background noises. So those are things that are bigger solutions there that you might want to look at as well. But mixing something with a lot of off-axis rejection with something that's going to do active noise cancellation is going to take a lot away. In fact, the problem we get into, like when we use Cedars in the past, we had to add noise back in because it felt sterile. Like a person on stage would just sound like there's nobody there. So we had to put people back into it too. But it was nice to have that control. Next question.
Our next question comes from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. I tried to update my video mic NTG to the latest firmware, and now it's got a purple light and stopped working. No luck with the normal troubleshooting steps. Has anyone seen this specific issue?
Almost anytime you do a firmware update and it doesn't work anymore, you need to call service. You need to call the company that you bought it from. In this case, I think the Rode, you've most likely bricked it. I mean, like that. Anytime you're doing a firmware update and then it doesn't restart, it's been bricked, and you may have to send it back to them to unbrick it or to replace it, or however it's going to work. Now you have to look at whether you lost power or connectivity, or the cable got jiggled while it was doing it. Those are the kind of things that it is the most. I mean, every time I do a firmware update, I just make sure I don't do anything. Like I'm going to do this and then go do something else. I just stare at it and I make sure that it's on backup power. I make sure that everything's done, because the one time that you can really brick something is a firmware update. It's worth putting off for years before you do it. If you don't have a solid way to make sure that you have to be super careful about that. That is like the most dangerous thing to do, a piece of hardware. And it's necessary, but you have to be super careful. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany asks, how important for the success of the show does the panel rate the fact that the topic of the panel, AV production, matches the medium, Zoom, mics, camera, the whole thing takes place on? Would other topics have to play harder?
Go ahead, Rupert.
I just wanted to add this sort of dimension to this, that even some of the other broadcast, related groups out there have these panel discussions or meetings or events or whatever about the future of broadcast or cloud, whatever, and cloud migration. And some of the AV production in those meetings is less than ideal.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of other places that we can go and that we will go. So, you see us experiment with it a little bit, and you'll see us experiment with it a lot more as we go into the labs, where we're doing everything from embedded processing to 3D and tracking and all kinds of other stuff in after hours. Those things will percolate forward. After hours is going to be a place for me to start experimenting with what are people interested in. So, for instance, I put it in the email. This week we're talking about Isadora 3 times, because it's really important. There's a unique opportunity because we have access to Andy and Tlaloc, who really understand Isadora. We're running our entire show on it, and so we're going to but that's kind of a branching off of what we normally do, and we're going to see how many people show up and how many people work on it. And it's going to be 2:00, by the way, Pacific Standard Time in after hours, Wednesday through Friday, and but that's the beginning, of us expanding out. I think we have great 3D artists. We have great other media artists that we just haven't given the opportunity to contribute and be part of that conversation. And so we'll continue to expand that, starting in after hours and then in office hours. So stay tuned for that. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I was going to say after hours and Discord, there's a lot of that media that people have produced already, as Alex mentioned. One other thought that just came to mind was this person is asking about how the topic matches the media and sort of maybe the platform as well. So maybe there's room for office hours or after hours to experiment with other platforms like, Zoom events or Vimeo or other, streaming things, and sort of just look at it through that lens, so that, the Zoom element is sort of bypassed, and we're really just taking a close look at what does this particular platform do or change as far as the office hours experience.
Yeah, I think that we're pretty embedded in Zoom for now. We are experimenting with some other stuff that we'll probably bring to the surface for everyone to look at and play with. I don't think that what we need is something that's specialized for what we're doing. So I'm not looking for something that Zoom for me is the solution that we're going to use for general meetings and how we get together and everything else. If we use some other platform, it's because it's technically superior in audio, video. Like for instance, with Zoom, I can't get isolated audio, so easily. And so those kinds of things, if we can solve those things, we may look at other platforms, which we are currently testing. And so we'll bring that more to the surface very soon, next week or two, for all of us to play with. But it has to be technically superior to what we're doing now to spend the time on it. But I do think that, so I think that we're a little in Zoom in that sense, but I think that the subject matter, I mean, we were talking about generators a couple weeks ago, so we talk about a lot of things that we're trying to figure out. Go ahead, Rotem.
The place that we're usually doing that is after hours, because we play with Zoom events in after hours a lot. Right. We have like few accounts that rolling around. Last week on office hours is running through Riverside and not through Zoom. We're recording it on a different platform. So we're playing with a lot of stuff, and after hours is the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He states, BBC staff often make Christmas tapes, which combined humorous bits from program with staff-centered theater and musical numbers as a means of entertainment and bonding as a team. Have you seen similar practices today?
Go ahead, Rupert.
To the best of my knowledge, the BBC sort of still do this in a similar way, or they do something similar. They've run a thing called Comic Relief and another thing actually called Children in Need every year for forever, and they always do a whole bunch of comical stuff between the team across different shows, special editions, and goofy stuff on the news. And so maybe they still do sort of Christmas special stuff too, but these periodic comedic themes across the whole platform, I think, still happen.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yes, depressingly, it's about 40 years since I work at the BBC, so I'm probably a little out of date, but these Christmas tapes were generated by the VT department, and at the time, at least when I was there, each of the independent stations in the UK and the BBC would then share their Christmas packages with each other. I would tell you they were never meant for broadcast. They were meant for heavy drinking and then watching, and often contained content that today would have people fired.
Right. I will say the BBC World Service had the coolest bar. Hidden inside of it. It was the most English bar that I'd ever seen. It's like it used to be hidden inside of the BBC World Service. It felt like the most quintessential British experience that I think I had in London. Next question.
Our next question is from Claudio in Kinsa City, Philippines. I want to do a 720p recording of 4 panelists from 2 Zoom rooms, 2 panelists each, outputting video via HDMI to an Atem Mini Extreme ISO. Will there be any sync issues with the video coming from 2 Zoom rooms? How do you avoid or fix the sync live and not in post?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Well, to keep the 2 rooms just in sync between each other, you want to make sure they're on a similar network, identical network path, really, and make sure the machines are basically as identical as you can get them. Because if you get a variation in their network topology or slightly different in performance in those machines, then something's going to get out of whack. So, but if they are similar machines, on the same network path, then they should be relatively in sync. You could choose to just take audio from one of them, or even have a third separate path for audio and then ISO that out. But you need to keep them as identical as possible for them to perform similarly.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, +1 on that. Similar machines with a similar order in kind of the whole topography of the network is what's going to make a difference here.
there is no great way to do this. So I'm just, kind of the reality is you're not going to be totally into it, have it totally work. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at even for what we're doing for Office Hours 2.0 is because we have a fixed number of people, and I don't know if I would do this with consumers, and I mean non-technical people trying to be part of it, but we may start moving to Unity comms for all of our panelists so that we have ISOs of everybody, because it's the ISO output from Zoom that is just the killer, is that we can't get that to properly manage it. Next question.
Our next question is from Alex Goldner in London, UK. Different framing of folks in Supersources. For Office Hours 2.5, will it be possible to have an app move and scale the sources so that if 3 people are in a Supersource, they'll be framed so their faces are the same size?
So you probably wonder how this happens in broadcast. The way they do that is with the camera. So almost everybody that is in a Supersource is framed by a camera operator and framed properly so that they fit into the Supersources just right. And most of them are sitting in they're sitting in an insert studio, and the insert studio is set up for them to sit right in the middle, and everything is framed just right to make all that work. So I think that the first step we're going to do is try to nudge panelists along to find Chris Fenwick has built a great frame, and I think we're going to try to find that frame across the panelists that we're going to see how that looks and see if that is the right mix of it. There's going to be a lot of experimentation. So in addition to that, we're going to try to make that work. Now, that said, we may get to a point where we do some scaling. The problem really is if someone's scaled up too much, scaling them down means that there's black around them. We're letterboxing and pillar boxing. So it doesn't really work to go backwards. And the number one problem we have is generally people being too small or too large in frame, not too small. I mean, that's not the most common, but yeah, you can see Ken right now with a little guide that Chris built. And I think that we're going to try to encourage our panelists to find the guide. So that we can get that all kind of lined up. That said, we could theoretically type in things that would let us scale someone up a little bit and over, but we're still working on that. So anyway, so stay tuned. Next question.
Our next question is from Eric Buckus in Chicago. Has anyone used the Flowix NDI Converter with SPX GC? Bless you. It takes the graphics URL and converts it to an NDI stream, but it's PC only.
I don't think anybody has used it yet. We're just getting into SPX, and we are playing with Casper and SPX for Office Hours 2.0. So that's already kind of in the works. So hopefully we'll have more information for you as we go down that path. But yeah, I don't think we've quite figured that out yet. So so stay tuned for that. All right. We are now shifting gears to our second hour. And what we're going to talk about a little bit is generally at least where I'm trying to take teams. I'm going to propose a couple things that I'm kind of give you an overview of it. As I go through that, the main thing that I want to do is get feedback. And I really thought about is this something that I want to put in the second hour, especially on YouTube. But I decided that I thought it was important to, kind of think through that process with all of us. And I think that it was important for everyone to kind of be part of that process. And so I started kind of working through the pieces here. And of course, I'm in the middle of, I had a list that I had built, and for some reason it's not public. Oh, I know, because I didn't put it up here. There we go. I was in the wrong section of notes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm thinking about building, and then kind of open it up to the group. So the big thing is that I've done this before. It's at various levels, built a lot of teams over the last 30 years. And so one of the things that we want to do is think about how to start to build verticals and start to kind of figure out what groups are going to take that on. It is important that it's not a person, that a team is not a person. It's a group of people that slowly understand how to make that thing work. So we want to make it, provide people with that opportunity. We also want the teams need to be something that people are learning. So we're not expecting them to come in. We'd like them to come in with some in the area that they're coming into, that they have some skill set that is going to contribute to that. But we also, the team being part of a team or being, involved in what we're doing should be something that's growing people's skill sets and then allowing them also to interact with other people. Because, a lot of this is the opportunity to be on any kind of team in any sort of way, is that you are the best way to get to know people and the best way to get to know who you want to work with, who you want to hire, who you want to get hired by, who you want to build projects with, is to do stuff, with them. And so it's a really, really great opportunity to make that happen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're, looking at. Number one is, of course, the web, with the website, and we're going to have Ken kind of managing that process. And that has to do with the design and implementation of the website, but it also has to do with content. So if you think about, I think that there's a real opportunity for us. Some of the guides that we talk about here all the time. How do we put those into something that people can read, and things that we've learned that come up in a week? I think that there's an opportunity for a blog that, hey, we all kind of coalesced around this, or this was a cool idea, and having these a kind of a blog that's updating, with those things, as well as a kind of a set of guides, like those kind of like, this is the reference kits. Those are the kind of things that we have, and thought processes and things that people, and I think going out and finding members, doing interviews with members, doing those kinds of things. So it's really a publishing, platform of some kind, of some sort, that lets us kind of give people more information around, that kind of enriches our experience here. I think that also, right now we send you a very terse list of what we're doing over the, here's what we're it's like the paragraph that Alex writes while he's working on other things. I was very proud of myself that I actually got it done yesterday morning instead of Monday morning. Usually Monday morning there's always a day that I haven't figured out yet. This week it was Friday. You'll notice that when I did the morning thing, I just skipped it. I'm still working on Friday. So I think that what I'd like to do is make sure that when we have second hours, and what I want to do, and this is a whole nother team, but what I want to do is have the team that is on the website is building out, enriching the second hours. Like, here's a whole bunch of things to read, and here are links to things to look at, so people can fully study, what's happening in a second hour as well. And so there's kind of places for that. So it's really a design team. And one thing I want to underline is that you'll notice that there's going to be a lot of teams that don't require heavy video knowledge, to be part of. These are all things that you can contribute to. I think that to the level that, Ken is ready for it, at first it's just going to be content and really design, like pictures and so on and so forth, and everything else. And then eventually, to some degree, I think that Ken will kind of set the structure for the content management system for WordPress to do what it needs to do. And then we'll have people kind of building that stuff out. The goal is to have Ken be able to think about the core, and then have a team around him that's thinking about what to go into that, and to manage that process. So that's kind of the web process of that. Social, Jeffrey Powers is most likely going to be managing most of that. He's already stepped up for that, and he's already been doing a great job with YouTube. Of course, there's going to be, what do we do on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitch and, all the other Instagram. So these are all things that, we need a team that's going to kind of think about posts that happen during the, I think every day there should be a post that goes up and says, this is what we're talking about across these different platforms, for the people that not for people who are following me, but for people who are following office hours. And then people like me will retweet it, that type of thing, to kind of push that following towards it. But I think that, being able to have, build a standing there. So a team that figures out what that should look like, I think is going to be part of it. In the broadcast, of course, for 2.0, there's a lot of pieces to it. There's, design. How are we designing the shows? How are we designing the graphics for those shows? You have the motion graphics. You have, so there's also, so there's all the super sources that you're seeing, and there's going to be sweepers and logos and other things. And how do we frame things up, and what do they look like on that? And that team is going to, and Aaron Huesledge is going to be kind of heading up that team to kind of work on those things. So we'll be building a team around Aaron to kind of figure those things out, to make that work. There's also, though, the thinking about the interface for things like Mukana. Mukana is, really a, for how it looks for office hours. Mukana can be adjusted to look like anything. So how do we want it to look? Right now it's been like, we threw something up, and so the team can think about what those things look like related to that, and thinking about the color schemes and the buttons and the voting things and all the other things can be all adjusted. So the team needs to kind of think through those things. Also, though, interface design for Universe. So thinking about those things and what they want and what they don't want, how that automation works and how the editing works for all of those bits and pieces. And I think that there's two levels of editing. There's being able to build packages eventually, as well as the editing for the actual show. And so I have one that's listed as, we need a team for Carl graphics. so Carl, who's going to build, like, I envision a team that's watching the show. That's all. And remember, when we do the live show, the goal is to put everybody on Unity comms. So everyone's going to be on comms, talking to each other and figuring stuff out in their own areas. But, we have to have a team that's looking at, like, how do I build examples when someone asks what is the best product? How do they throw it together and post it up and make it available to whoever is technical directing there. Of course, audio, figuring out how we're going to manage audio. A playout team that's just worried about playout. So when someone calls to do a playout, it's ready. So, those are things, and these are all for the live show. And I don't think these are things that people do permanently. I think there's a broadcast group and everyone's in it. And then someone might do play out on one day and then graphics on another and then TD on another. And, you have different people experimenting with it. The big goal with all of that, and as well as streaming, is I really believe that we're on the precipice of a new kind of media, this kind of participatory media where we have all these panelists that are experts and we have all these people asking questions, and we have this, it's a very different kind of show, and we have to learn how to do it. And we'll learn from each other by doing it. But we're also building teams that, again, we're making this architecture as open as we can so that you all know how to make it work. You can go grab the Isadora file and make it your own and do those things. But once you make it your own, given that there's nobody that's ever done it before, we won't have anybody that knows how to do it if we don't do it ourselves. So by having a lot of people working on office hours, what we're doing is we're figuring out, we're coalescing around a solution, but we're also figuring out how to do it, but also who can do it. So that if someone here wants to hire someone right now, there's nobody, it would be very hard to do that. So, but if we have 30, 40, 50 people that know how to run the system, then now all of us can start applying it, go pitch it to other people going, I can do this thing, or we can do this thing and we can make your show great. And you have actual people that you could hire to do it. So, and I have people that I can hire to do it. So I think that's the goal with all of these things. I think second hour, we're probably looking at a research. So we need a lot of research done for the second hours. Like right now it's just kind of like I invite someone and we figure it out. So how do we really dig into it to make sure we have the right questions? We also need prep. Right now I prep everybody. So any second hour that you see with an external person is 2 or 3 hours of my time to get them, ready to go. The interactions back and forth, the preparation, the test calls, all those things are stuff I'm doing. And so we want to slowly train other people to make sure that actually happens, and put that together. And a polling team that just is putting up polls. We have a poll system inside of, that'll be a lot of fun to use with the members, but we don't use it because I would have to do that during the show. So those are the kind of things that we want to look at across that broadcast. Finally, as it goes into after hours, there's a managing after hours itself. Right now it's kind of an informal, people being made hosts and co-hosts, and we kind of have to figure out formalize that over time. But also think about the labs. So we're going to be doing a couple labs this week. Eventually, by the end of the month, we'll be doing at least one lab a day. And by next year, we'll probably start doing 2 or 3 labs in a day of different things. It just depends on, I'm just trying not to stretch everybody too far. So, but figuring out what the schedule of the labs are and what the design of them is, and figuring out who the talent is that's going to come in and manage all of that. So there's teams that just need to manage those things. So again, the goal here is to provide opportunities for people to do lots of different things, even if they're not ready to do broadcast or audio or video. There's lots of other places to get to know this process as you come up to speed. So those are the main areas that I'm looking at right now as we kind of move forward. And I just now we'll open it up to the. We've got a couple questions, so let's go ahead and throw them in. Liberty?
Danny Law in Malaysia asks, would you still need a person to actively cut in OH 2.0, or it's pretty much an automated through Isadora?
So our goal is to actually have it. Our goal with Isadora is to be able to scale from nobody, like just run it and it'll run okay, to lots and lots of people. So the idea is to scale it up to have individuals running different pieces of the model, and basically having different interfaces dependent on how many people we have available to run the show. So a human being interacting with a system that makes it easier for that an interface that makes that easier is the key to the operation. We don't want to figure out right now the way we do it. Edits in a lot of ways is very much like having a car where you actually reach down and pull the tires. Isadora gives us kind of more of an automatic, way to do that. But I think that it's going to, and Isadora in Universe will give us a way. You can see Andy has a kind of the interface as it stands right now. So you have a lot of manual control as an operator to make some of those changes, but you also have the ability to let it run and let it do, like it's going to build those super sources for you. You don't want to have to build the super sources. You don't want to have to figure out who the lower thirds are. It knows those things. So you can say, I want to do a lower third. Not yet, but you will be able to say, I want to do a lower third. It knows who's on screen, so it just puts up the right lower third. And that's what all these little numbers that you see at the end of our names are, is just so that we know, so it knows who we are and properly straps us, properly puts us into the super sources. All those things are being done by it. So those are the kind of things you want to automate to actually have the show. There's a mixture. One of the things that we found with Hangouts, we built a bunch of tools for Hangouts that we did what we call soft pinning or soft selecting. And so when you soft select people, you say, in the system, I only want you to pay attention to these three people. just pay that, and then auto switch between them. But then we are also able to affect the attack. And so now it can sit there and decide it's going to jump to that person or it's going to wait a little bit until they come in. It depends on, and we would change the attack per person. And so those are the kind of things that, it will do for you. So the idea is for it to be easier for you to do, but not for it to take over, unless there's nobody available, and then it would take over. It won't be as good a show. The best shows will be done by people cutting the show and organizing it with each other. But we also want to make it so that it's relatively self-sufficient if we have a day where there's not that many people available. So that's going to be kind of the game plan there. And again, we'll keep on talking about it with all of you. My goal is not that we have some secret sauce that only we can do, only office hours or 090 or whatever. The goal is that a lot of us know how to do this, and people start to see this kind of content outside of office hours, because I think it's really compelling. And I think this kind of conversation can happen around many, many different subjects. Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Douglas asks, what safeguards will be in place to make sure team management is delivering on their responsibilities? Will there be a designated ombudsman?
Ombudsman. I don't use that word very often myself. Starting, we're going to be forming these over the next 2 weeks, and so you'll Ken, is the form still up there? If you want to help out with office hours, is that still there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we sent out 2 different questionnaires. One we kind of emailed out. We have a list from that. There's a site on the website. There's a place if you want to help out to fill out the form. From that form, we're going to send out another form for you to fill out that is specifically like what areas, now that we know what areas we're trying to go into to start with. Go ahead, Ken. You already have some of that.
Yeah, that's already built into the form. If you go to the Join Us form, it opens out to being quite comprehensive in what skill areas that you have.
And we'll probably still send out yet another one that is, what are you interested in? So it's asking what skill areas, but we're going to have one very specific to this that because we have two different questionnaires. So we'll figure that out. So the point is that if it's, we'll be sending that out as we go through that process. We will, obviously we have some people that I've already started to kind of put into place based on their past work here. I will be meeting with starting when we get the teams formed, I will be meeting with all of the teams individually every week So probably, at first it'll probably be like a half-hour meeting every week where we just talk through things. We talk about where we're at. We talk about what we're trying to get done. I will probably then have also a kind of a team leader meeting that is just with the folks that we're setting up as the team leaders for these different areas, and we'll start to, figure out what's working and not working. What I will say is that this is potentially a very large group of people that are all volunteers. It will be messy. You just need to know. I don't want to manage everybody's expectation. This doesn't even corporations where everyone's getting paid a lot of money, a lot of people, messy. so it doesn't get better when everyone's got their own thing. So we just have to manage our expectations. I think people get very impatient that things are but you'll find that I'm very patient about it because I'm exacting of what we want to do. I don't think it serves anybody for us to pull back on what we're trying to do, but I'm pretty patient with the process because I've done it a lot, and I just know that there's a certain wow and flutter to the process, and so we'll so people need to be understanding about it, or it won't be the right place for them. So, but I think that we can. In the past, we've put together some pretty great teams. In Pixel Core, we had some teams that became companies, that are still companies, that and team members that are still working with each other, and people that look for each other. It can be a very connected process, and connecting process when it works. And so we'll be working on that a lot. Next question.
Alex Golner in London, UK asks, what would a social media team be a good idea to direct folks to OH 2.0?
Yes. So, and I think that I probably didn't get to the social team direction before I did that. But yeah, so the goal is to build a team that's, number one is doing a better job of our YouTube. We're going to, as we do this, as we move to Office Hours 2.0, when we've decided that that's the main feed, the one that we're testing right now, we will then move over to the new YouTube page and then start promoting that. And the goal is for it to look better, and things that we can spend more time on, but also like how do we post on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and all the other social networks so people know that we're there. And so we'll be doing a variety of those things to kind of let people know that it'll be slow and we'll kind of figure it out. I'm not in any rush, but sometime early next year, we'll start to pick up speed and be really looking at how do we make sure that people know we're around. Next question.
Our next question is from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Is something like kit.co a good idea for linking through once the nonprofit status gets set up for linking recommended kits or products? And would these product references need a separate team or be part of the social media team?
I'm not familiar with kit.co, but we'll definitely take a look at it. I'm going to copy it here. Here we go. I'll take a look at it. I don't know if I'll need something like that. I think that really but I'm going to take a look at it and see if it makes sense. The for the most part, that'll probably be the web, content team, but the social team will be promoting that the web content team did something. And by the way, you'll be able to be on a couple different things. You doesn't mean you have, I think people worry about being pigeonholed. It's just a matter of making sure that you can commit the time to actually being productive. So that's you don't want to get overextended. Next question.
Ted Claudio in Quezon City, Philippines. How would the team collaborate online? Discord?
At first, we'll use Discord. So we'll probably start building up some specific channels and that are kind of private to the teams to some degree, so that they can talk amongst themselves. So the Discord will be the first place that we go, and then we'll start figuring out what else do we need to add. I'm probably going to make some requests of some of our potential partners to, for instance, like, can we serve, can we use Frame.io, that type of thing. I don't have any commitments yet, but that kind of thing, so that we can kind of move things around, and we'll do it organically. I don't have a hard idea of exactly all those things. I do want to keep it relevant. I will frustrate a lot of people because I will add very little. You saw how long we stuck with just Zoom, without any special bells and whistles, so you can expect that pace. so I will move very, very slowly, because every time we add something new, it's a new level of complexity, a new set of things that can break, a new externality. And until we have, real, money to work with. If we're successful, I can't afford to have it become something that suddenly has to be done. Everything you turn on, everyone expects, pretty quickly. They go from, wow, this is cool, to, I can't believe this is the way it is. so it happens surprisingly fast. So we'll move very slowly, but we'll start with Discord. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas asks, how might the amounts of time commitment and availability be agreed upon?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, in the past, what we've generally done is people have put in all kinds of different time frames. Usually what I try to get people to do per position is 6 hours of time plus 3 hours of management. Just know that there's going to be meetings and discussion and other things, and 6 hours of actually doing something. That's really where I try to find its place. It might be a little bit more, might be a little less, depending on the team. But I try to keep people from committing to more than that. And if they can't commit to that, it's kind of hard to know whether they're going to be able to execute in the team. So those tend to be the kind of things. And generally, I do try to keep people. We'll have a kind of a general team for some of these things that you can move around in. So I can do this thing this week and that thing next week. What I tend not to do is let anyone join more than 2 of those things, no matter how much time they think they have. I don't usually let them do more than 2 because they'll burn themselves out. So I don't. We've had people jump on teams a lot harder than that, and as we start to build actual teams, I know a lot of people here have spent more time than that on certain jobs as we needed to come up to speed. But we're going to try to kind of minimize that a little bit as we bring the teams up to speed. And then a lot of the way you'll find that I work is once we get the teams kind of coalesced, I tend to work around trying to find people to make time commitments to when they're actually we're going to do this. Like there's 3 hour blocks of time in their day that they're going to do it. We may be more flexible than we have been in the past, but it used to be 3 hour blocks. It could be 2 or 3 2 hour blocks or something that they're going to work on the thing, that they're doing. Then we also tend to generate what I call specific measurable results. So SMRs. This is what I'm going to do next week, and then the next meeting, the first part of every meeting is, what did we say we're going to do? And then what do we do? not like, we just need to know. We just need to know what it is, and so those SMRs tend to be useful in that process. So then we just kind of figure it out. But that'll be kind of where we're at. We may lean more on the SMRs and less on the time, but we'll see how it goes. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. For the live show, will we need a team to process/onboard from chat in YouTube?
No, we'll turn it off. So we'll turn off all the chats that we can't turn off. So we have Mukana. We don't need that. So the only reason chat's on right now is because it's an automatic generated thing that comes out of Zoom. So Zoom doesn't turn it off by default. So as we move away from the Zoom broadcast, we'll be able to schedule the events, right? We'll be able to schedule our YouTube events in advance. And as we schedule those events, we can turn chat on and off. And I don't care about the social comments. And so we mostly need the social team to remind people that they can go to Mukana to do it, to ask questions. And so that'll be more of what we need. I will admit that I kind of, I don't look very kindly. As someone who's done lots and lots of social events, I think that their comment systems are broken beyond repair. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Alex, in listening to the team structure, I have to compliment you on the measured approach. I wonder, when do you sleep?
Not much, but I try. But you can see by this team structure of why I didn't do it before. I just didn't have enough energy. I was really in production up until last week, and I got a couple things in the next couple days, and then after that, I'm in kind of plan making in the company as well as building this up. And so I've done it a little bit before, so I've had time to think about it a little bit, but it does take energy to hand it off. That's been the problem that we've had up until now, is just that it takes time to hand things off. So I'll be handing that off, and then I think you'll find that all of this stuff gets better, and some things won't get done. Things will take time. Things we have to be kind of patient. It's really funny when I do this and I see myself in so many places doing the same thing. Anyway, so for those of you watching, there's just a lot of versions of us with the test going on. Anyway, again, I'm clear that some of it will work and some of it won't, and we just have to we're going to have to dance with it and be patient as we kind of move forward. Next question. This is a first hour question, I think. Let's pull that out for now. We'll come back to it at the end if we run out of time. Oops.
So,
it's okay. We'll find it.
Okay. Juan C. Robles in Mexico asks, will there be an R&D team, or are all teams have an R&D component?
All teams will have an R&D component, but I think it's a great idea to think about an R&D team that's just playing with things. That's mostly what we did within Pixelcore, where they were almost all R&D teams. So the compositing team was figuring out better ways to do compositing, and a lot of people were doing other things like that. So I think that there definitely will be some. And I realized I was in the wrong section here, so I apologize to the panelists who might have been raising their hand, and I was ignoring. I was in the wrong area, thinking that these were questions for me. So go ahead, Jason.
Actually, I think this is the only time in this hour that anyone's raised their hands.
Okay, good. Okay, so I didn't miss anything. Okay, I was like, oh no. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, the thing about office hours is that it is R&D. There's no way around it. All of it is R&D, and the idea that there is explicit R&D might make sense, but kind of in a very bespoke, discrete. This needs to be very specifically be played with. For example, I went into after hours and messed around with the preamps and the new 4Ks to see if they could drive, one of these. Same idea.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
Definitely, I can say on the web team there'll be a ton of R&D. That's mainly what I do. There are a lot of cool web stuff that just haven't had the time or the opportunity to really work on and experiment on, that we can look to see to bringing and making the website's experience even better.
Yeah. I think that the whole thing that we're doing here is R&D, but I do think that we may have a team that's experimenting in their area and going down down things that we may just send them after problems and have them go in and dig into them for people who are interested in doing that specific thing. It's a great idea. Next question.
Our next question is from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C. What documentation or operating procedures or manuals do we need?
Eventually, everything that we do has to have a manual. This is how you should write the article for the blog. This is how you build the graphics. So it's a mixture of templates and guides. So I think that that's going to be something that I don't want to encumber people too much with trying to write it all down immediately, but pretty soon after things start to run, we do have to kind of start to define that. My goal is, it's not something everybody likes to do, but my goal is to have people on the team that or the team is working on part of their time. When I talked about that, like what I try to do and what I've done in the past is get people to commit to 6 hours of doing something and 3 hours of management, and that 3 hours is part of that is documenting what you're doing, and so thinking about either a wiki or some kind of thing where we're documenting those bits and pieces. I admit that I tend to be very visual. I don't like to read a lot of text, and so my documentation tends to be in Keynote, lots of pictures and screen grabs and circles and things and small lists, and I make lots of pages. But we'll have to figure out kind of a process for that. But I do think that again, templates, samples, and documentation are all things that we need to think about. And then a lot of this will also be when you see this kind of check-in that we've been doing. We'll start as the teams come up to speed. One of the things that we did in Pixelcore that was really successful was the teams came back and talked about what they were learning every week. So if you have a bunch of teams, in Pixelcore we had 27 teams, and each one of them had about 9 people in them. So there was a lot of people involved, and each one of them was accountable to come back once a month and talk about what they were learning, what they were doing, how that was working. And that was, again, part of that little 3 hour, whatever was prepping the materials that they were going to use to show that. And much like what we're going to show a little bit on Wednesday with the USDZ, where a couple of us that have worked on something are going to come back and show some of those things. Now, if you take 27 teams and divide it by 4, you end up with a lot of presentations. So they were very short, 10 or 15 minutes each of that. But it made for a really dense day of people being able to show stuff. And so I think that we're going to experiment with that with the teams of having them, come back and talk about what they're they're learning and what they're figuring out and so on and so forth to kind of re-inject that knowledge back into the system. Next question.
Our next question is from Thalak Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York. Can active members that don't always have their cameras on still contribute?
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at probably 2/3 of the opportunities don't require cameras. So their management behind the scenes, process, research, working on things, and so the vast majority of them don't require cameras. In fact, it could get to the point where it's probably 80-90% of the opportunities are not something that you have to be on the panel or have to have a camera or have to do any of those other things. Or it's just a matter of being available and ready to be part of that process. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Should someone resubmit the volunteer form if they can't remember if they have submitted it previously or if they want to update their preferences?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, you can. Eventually, we'll have like a membership area where your details on. So yes, but definitely go back to I'll put the link to the join us form.
Give it 1 second though, because I want to work with Ken between now and Wednesday just to I want to get people's not only their skill sets but their interests specifically to the teams that I have outlined here, so that people can say I want to be part of that thing specifically. So just hold on to that thought, but we'll push it more next week than this week. I just wanted to kind of give people a sense of what we're kind of going towards. Next question.
Our next question comes from George Butters in Halifax, Canada. What is the process to volunteer for specific teams?
Go ahead, Ken.
I think Alex has again answered that in the last question, where we will, it will be, there's a form on the webpage, but I'll work with Alex and tweak that to his liking.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, first time, I believe, seeing a question from George, so just wanted to say welcome, but just follow those instructions on that form and by all means drop into after hours and get chatting to some folks.
And in general, we will, for the most part, be pretty open to people who want to join different teams, of letting them join those. The main thing is just being effective once you're in the team. So that's what we're really looking for, is more what you do once you get into it. So we'll definitely be open to, if you're something you're really passionate about, you should definitely sign up and not feel like you have to have a ton of knowledge in those areas. Most of the teams don't require a ton of that. It might require a ton of studying to get up to speed, but it may not require a lot off the ground. We're not expecting a ton. Go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to maybe throw out there a suggestion about having an operator position and then maybe a backup and then a person that's shadowing or in training. But
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the goal will be definitely, I mean, especially for the live stuff, is to have a group of people that are doing it that are hopefully, available. And to your point, a first and a second makes a lot of sense for any show. The other thing to remember is that especially for the live show, we're going to post when you're talking about shadowing, we're going to let everybody shadow it. So there'll be a room inside of After Hours that you can literally go to and just listen to the whole show, like listen to all the calling and watch all the bits and pieces. And then after the show, we'll talk about it, about what worked and didn't work, and just same way we did with Man in the Kitchen. So the goal is that there potentially is 50 or 60 people that are watching the show, but from the behind the scenes of the show, and then they're hopefully learning those things. And then the goal is that they go, well, I want to be part of that, and they'll jump in, but they won't be jumping in as flat-footed. They'll be jumping in having looked at it and watched it from behind for a while. Next question.
Our next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Could showcasing the work of various teams make good topics for regular second hours? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that once the teams get off the ground, most likely at least one, if not two of the days will be dedicated to, there's a high probability that Monday and Friday will be just, teams showing things, that are showing things that they're working on, and where things are going on. I'm not totally certain of that, but it'll be at least one of those days will be that. So I think you're absolutely right. And the teams will be oftentimes driving what we do in the second hours, because of what they're learning and what they're figuring out. So there may be a day dedicated to the teams to show a couple different things, and then they'll be affecting lots of second hours. Next question.
Our next question is from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. In theater, there's an amount of passion for the craft involved to motivate volunteers. But what do you think will be the motivation of volunteers for OH 2.0?
Go ahead, Ken.
No, it's not just about doing some exciting work and some research and development into that work. I know for me personally, finding good people, staff to work on, I have a number of paying jobs that finding good people to do that is I'm struggling with. So being able to help and build a team that's going to manage Office Hours 2.0, from that group, I'll be looking for people to hire for work that I have.
Yeah. Rotem?
So there is like the community give me so much that I want to bring back some of my experience back to the community. I think this is my passion, like to bring back to the community. This is why for the last 2 months, we're doing this week on office hours, and last week, last week. So it's bringing back to the community, because the community like teach you a lot.
And I do think that there's an opportunity that we're building something that's never been built before that you couldn't build in a traditional system. If you look at the number of people who are going to throw at something, in an experimental situation, it just wouldn't happen. Number two is that hopefully some people want to give back to the community in what they're doing. But I will always be focused on the teams being something that you're building skills, you're building something that's interesting, you're building opportunities. I believe that if you're volunteering in a system, that you should be getting something back out of it that's tangible. It might take some time, but you should be learning new skills, meeting new people, networking, and being fulfilled out of that experience, not just that you're doing something for the group. So you'll find that I'm always kind of trying to figure that out. And sometimes it'll just be work something that we have to get done and make that work. But I always want to try to find ways that people are, really feeling like they're building something that they're interested in that process. And if they're not, then they shouldn't be on that team. If they're on another team or not on the teams. So it's just, we want to always try to find the right people where it is making a difference for them. Next question.
Our next question is from Alex Goldner in London, UK. Will some people be in 2 teams? Is being in 3 teams too many?
Some people may be in 2 teams. 3 teams is too many. So yeah, it is. I've over many years of doing this, 3 teams is too many. It's just that there's a funny thing about it. It stretches people too far. And what you see, what the common symptom of that is, people get excited, they do a lot of something, and then it impinges on their life and their ability to get the rest of their life to work. And then they just drop out altogether. So we want to try to not have that happen as much as we can. It will happen, but we want to try to not have it be something where they're overwhelmed with the commitments that they've made because they were excited about it, but now it's too much. We've all had Thanksgiving dinner where we ate too. Well, I mean, not all of us, but there's a big celebration dinner where our mouth was larger than our stomach, and some people do that with volunteering, and I've done it many times, and I do that with work all the time. So we want to kind of we'll try to manage that process. Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Will there be standardized processes for managing complaints against team leaders and members, or will that be handled within a team?
At first, it'll be all to me. So the teams won't be big enough that it's a problem. But over time, we'll build more infrastructure for that. So that'll be something that we address pretty quickly. Part of not launching the teams until now has also been that I'm very aware of how many personal processes occur once we start having teams. So I just wanted to make sure there was something I could pay attention to. So but from at the beginning, it'll all be if you have a complaint about how things are working, I'll want to know about it. So because I'm designing it and trying to figure it out. Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. How will we mediate the inevitable conflicts that arise based on language or cultural differences? Will the team ombudsman be responsible for the mediation?
Yeah, I mean, these are all great questions because these are the things that come up. Like this is the Douglas is asking great questions here because this is the stuff that people don't think about when they start to build those things out. Is how are we going to deal with it? That's when you have contracts. You don't. I always, when we go into a contract process, people are like, "Why are you picking on this one little line or this other thing?" Because I'm picking on it as if I have to use it. Like I'm not saying, "Oh yeah, we'll sign anything. It's okay." I'm looking at like what happens if I get into that situation. And so, so for now, at the beginning, it will really be me having that conversation with folks because the teams won't be big enough that they're that much to do, hopefully, but we'll slowly build out a larger pipeline to make that work. So we'll stay tuned for that. Next question. And we're running out of questions. It'll be short. I'm fine with a shorter day if people don't have more questions about it. But if you want this to go on longer, this is the last one. All right, go ahead, Liberty.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Will a standard time zone be used for reference across all teams?
Yeah, I'm very much considering going. So Pixelcore all ran on UTC, which we just called Zulu. so for if all of our meetings were in Z, you see 1800 Z. I am seriously considering returning to UTC or Zulu. So we may. So I think that's most likely going to happen as we move forward, is to go back to a standard number that doesn't change. And it's confusing. It's confusing because everyone's time zones then change because it's a constant. But you get used to having just a UTC clock up. I actually have one. To this day, I still have it on my watch. So the UTC is still sitting there on my watch, even though I don't use it as much as I used to. So I think that most likely we'll return to UTC to make that work. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. Is volunteering part of the OH nonprofit?
Yeah. So we're just waiting to get, right now we're kind of building it up and getting interest and everything else, but we're hopefully weeks away from having the nonprofit status finalized. But it's all pending. I guess we thought it'd be a couple of weeks. I guess that was pre-COVID. Now it's like months. So of processing, but we filed it a long time. All the stuff was filed a couple months ago. So we're just waiting for the process to go through. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. Seems there is room for a facilitator.
I think so. I mean, I think there's definitely room for folks figuring. I'm not sure exactly how you're defining facilitator, but I do think that we're going to need to find places where people, once we get off I want to know about everything for the first little bit of time, and then I'll want to find ways to have people think about, someone else managing some of those things ahead of time. But I kind of want to. It's not so much that I need to control it, but I need to see it. As I design systems, I need to see everything that's going through it so that I can make adjustments to those systems in real time. Next question.
Our next question comes from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. How many different teams have been drafted out currently?
Right now, I have 6 as a whole team. Whether those subdivide any more than that will be, I'm trying to figure out exactly how we're going to, set that process up. But there's basically the web, and I can't decide where the social and web are. I think they're going to probably be connected to each other. So probably just web, then broadcast, then second hour, then labs, are the big 4. But then is there a post-production team that's kind of managing stuff before that? And then again, social, maybe the 6th one if we split that out. So those are the things that right now I have set up. Next question. I'll move those over for you.
Our next question is from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Will there be location-based teams for event coverage?
They're definitely. I think that we'll build up teams for event coverage when it makes sense to do that. It won't be something that's ongoing. It'll be something like, hey, we have an IBC team or a CES team or those kinds of other things there. So that's going to be, and then we'll see who's interested, and we'll go through that. With COVID the way it is right now, I chose this with NAB. We kind of pulled away, and we'll do the same with. I chose not to do anything with Infocom or IBC because I don't want to be accountable for putting people in what I consider harm's way at the moment. And so So we'll wait until COVID before we try to cover any event with physical boots on the ground. We'll wait for COVID to kind of calm down, and so I don't think that it's calm yet, especially going into the winter. So I think that those will come, but I think that, we'll have teams that we stand up for specific locations to cover certain events. My dream is to cover, I know this will sound crazy, but Haifa, the Harare International Festival for the Arts in Zimbabwe is like someday I imagine us all descending upon it. It's like South by Southwest, but in Africa. And it's the coolest event that I have gone to in the past. But we'll do that kind of thing all over the world once things have normalized a little bit. Next question.
Alex Golner in London, UK. OH work product, IP, patents.
Our goal is to be as open as we can about everything that we're doing. The goal is not for anything that we're doing in OH. Our goal is that we all know how to do it. And that it's not. I'm not ready. I'm fine with it being. So by doing it this way and making it public, we basically make it very. We're not doing open source in the way that you would think about it. We're doing open architecture, but by publishing it, we're creating prior art. So that basically by publishing it and showing everybody how to do it, it actually makes it much more difficult to patent it. So because we're generating a lot of prior art, and so I want people though to not have. Open source becomes a really complicated thing for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of contracts that I sign that say I can't use anything that has open source in it because it creates a bunch of legal things. So I don't want to create something that sits inside of that, but we're going to keep publishing what we're doing out to the public because my goal is not that we figure out how to do a secret thing. It's that we build an entirely new industry and the only way to do that is to make sure that those ideas are available to everyone. So we're going to keep on publishing. There are things that I can't talk about, and there's things that 090 does that that I'm tied up in and everything else. So I can't. It's not like I'm publishing everything I know. I'm publishing a lot of it, but everything we do here, my goal is that we keep on pushing out what we're learning and making sure that everyone knows how to do it. I know it's not the usual approach to things that people put on, but I think that the stuff that we're executing. I get the question about Mukana is different. It's part of 090, so that's a different how it works, and everything else is a little bit more tied down, and it's going to have its own trajectory. But outside of that that piece, everything that we're doing is stuff that we want to make sure that everybody knows how to do. And we're not going to hang on to it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, would there be infrastructure within the teams to support and onboard team members with challenges and disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's going to absolutely be opportunities for that. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the accessibility score we have on office hours, and that's mainly down to Laura. So yes, having people with different abilities makes the website that much better and much more open for everyone.
And we're definitely going to be looking at where we can find what people are good at and get them in there and figure out how we basically figure out how to work around the other issues that they may have related to that. And I've been doing that for a long time. so it's a big commitment on my side. It takes a little time to figure it out. So we'll keep on coming back to the other thing that I know about that is that it requires patience. It's not, it just requires a little bit of work to figure out how to make it work for everybody. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas asks, will work within OH teams be accreditable? Will references be available?
Go ahead, Ken.
No, for the web stuff, I use a very specific tool, and what I use to build WordPress. There are a very small handful of people who can do that. So, yeah, they'll be having a reference on being able to use the tools that we use to build WordPress is very valuable. And
over time, the teams will start to track people's participation related to what they're doing, and it will mean something. So, there's I do think that there are 3 things you need to know about someone when you're doing it is if you don't already know them. So the number one way people get hired is because people know each other, and that's being part of teams means people are going to know you for better or for worse. So that's why you want to join the team in a sober way of like, hey, I want to be effective, because if you're not effective, then people know that too. So, but if you are effective in that area, the number one way is that you get the number one way you get jobs is because people know you, or people that they know you know you. That's like 90% of hiring. Like that's the reality of how things happen. And then but if you don't know someone and you do need to hire them, you need to know how many hours they spent doing the thing that you're hiring them to do. You need to know what is their certified skill level, like what do they actually know how to do. And thirdly, from 360 reviews, what people said about how they worked, in a variety of different areas. If you know those 3 things, it's not as good as knowing them or knowing the person that knew them, but it's the next best thing from that process. And we're going to work on building those tools, but not immediately. That's probably a year away. So just to put it in perspective. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, with the remote distributed workflows we espouse, do we need to even have boots on the ground?
I think there's opportunities to put people on the ground to do things. Like I really want to find a satellite truck to cover John Preto's launches, and so I think there'll be places where it's really fun, and I think that there's really we had brainstormed earlier about things like creating an event where we're with divers, or that are going 100 feet under, or an event where we go to rock formations that are similar around the world, all in a couple hours, where we're jumping from one camera to another and going back and forth, and all of these things. That's going to require people in the physical world to do things. Now, the massive part of the production is going to be online, and it's going to be distributed, and we're all going to be part of that. But we want to make sure that we, over time have people with skill sets all over the world that can, drop down and execute, and that can even be helping someone get set up for to participate. I'd love to get to a point where we have kits in different continents that are the second hour, like guest kits that are able to be sent locally, not, internationally, that can, and possibly in a lot of cases, someone from our group who's kind of known in that team can show up and help the person set it up, or at least manage the call with them or whatever in their language or whatever that looks like. So there's still a need for people in the physical world for a while. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, how will we handle insurance and liability issues with location-based teams? If someone gets sick or hurt while operating in the course and scope of OH Global, who is liable?
All good questions. If we actually get to something where we're doing something that big, then we will have to figure that out. Yeah, I mean, like it's any kind of major production is going to require liability insurance, and so we'll be figuring it out. It's definitely something I'm accustomed to dealing with. Sending a person out, probably they're accountable for it. We'll probably need to have them sign something for that. Sending a group out, though, as we start to scale it, we probably have to figure that out. Next question.
Rupert McCray in Dallas, Texas. If OH teams wanted to come together to deliver a paid for profit project, how could that be handled?
So the goal there is that we're providing the opportunity for people to connect and to learn. Any one of us individually can hire everybody to do something. And what we're building is a huge number of people that know each other, that have a specific way of doing things. We're standardizing the process, we're standardizing the knowledge base. How that ends up being expressed in a for-profit thing will not be done in office hours. It will be done by, it will be, like 090 will go hire a bunch of people to do a show that we know now who knows how to use the system, or John Preto's, team, will do something, or there's a variety of people, and it might be an individual that you send out, that you hire. I mean, 80% of my hiring at this point is out of office hours. So like, it's like I'm hiring people that are in office hours all the time right now, based on what I know. That the problem is I don't know what they know. Like I need to know what they know. And so the people that have shown up and I know who they are, I go, oh, that's the person to use for that thing, and then that, and so I think that that's going to be a lot of it. But the goal is to build this community that anybody can use to hire people to do those types of jobs. There's I'm not going to get into it. There's a lot more you can do there, but anyway, we'll leave it at that. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany. How will the education hour be integrated in OH 2.0 and OH 2.0 teams?
I don't know yet. I mean, obviously we meet every week, and we talk about it. I think that what we need to figure out eventually, the office hour 2.0 will affect the what we're doing right now, because we don't do it to YouTube. It's a little bit different as far as how we manage that process, and that's because the educators prefer to not be streamed to YouTube while they're talking about stuff. But I think that we want to find ways to better support educators down the road, especially as we go into, next year is I will predict boldly that next year is probably the most complicated year for education ever, like in the history of the world. I know that sounds crazy, but our education system's in a very fragile state at the moment. It's about to become super fragile. And so supporting, there's a lot of turbulence that is below the surface that I don't think a lot of people are. Some people can see. I can see it because I'm in the meetings. But there's a lot of incredible amount of turbulence coming, and so we need to find ways that we can support teachers to kind of move into the future, because they're going to need it. Next question. Oh, Rodham. Sorry, Rodham. Sorry, go ahead before we jump on.
It's a little bit related to the manuals before, and I think it's related also to this, but we can make like a YouTube channel, a place that is dedicated to video tutorials, and then you can support the educations, and you can support the whole group as a manual, but in a video tutorial.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing there is that what my goal is to be able to start creating new shelves inside of the new YouTube channel. So once we start building the new YouTube channel, the goal is to not just have office hours running. I'm going to be posting things to it. My goal is to have so there's a handful of things I'm going to start, once we get through the office hours thing, the handful of things I'll post to my own channel, but most of my training and general training that would be office hours related will be in the new channel. And my flat out goal is to move viewers to that new channel, to get more people to do it. And I think that there is an opportunity for other people to put out training, and part of the team that's working on social will need to, basically curate that a little bit, push it back and say, that's not quite what we need. Make this better, make this video better, or whatever, so that there's a quality level that goes up there. It's not just anybody posting stuff. There's a format in which we do it. And we're going to find that format. And, but the opportunity is to serve different areas, whether you're doing virtual media production or education or other things. But it's also for people to start building a name. The hardest thing about a YouTube channel when you're by yourself, if you haven't done a lot of, for me, it's been easy most of my life, because I've been in radio. First I was in radio, and then I was in, TV, and then I was an ILM, and then I was a guest on a show. And so for the last 20 years, I have kind of a pre-built way of launching something, and I have Twitter enough Twitter followers to kind of move things along, and so those things make it easy. My goal is to take what I have there and to focus it into that channel, and then other people who have great things to offer within the group build training that goes into that. They start building up their name, and I'm totally open to them then building more stuff on their own channel. The goal is that you can use that group channel as a way to kind of reach. I did that with Leo, so me being on Leo's show helped me build up a following that then allowed me to do a lot of my own stuff. And I still go back to being part of Twit, when that makes sense. And so it's one of those things that's a very symbiotic thing that we can use to have our members be successful across the board. Next question.
Our next question is from Tamara
Hi, Tamara.
Krinsky.
I know Tamara.
Awesome. In Los Angeles. For those of us who are new to the group and intrigued by what's being discussed, what's the best way to catch up on the overall vision of what you're doing? Don't want to bore the folks who already know this.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, it sounds like you could just ask Alex, but no, join Discord. Join, I think we're doing a weekly summary, at least that I've seen, last week on office hours. I don't know if that's being made available publicly to anyone at this point, but that's a good place to start. And also just skip around, whatever suits your fancy. There are a lot of episodes and they're all searchable.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever bore a lot of us in asking that question. We're happy to talk on and on about office hours. And yeah, as Jason pointed out, there is last week on officehours.com, which is our summary show, which, even if I say so myself, is getting really tight and good. And that's a good catch up of the week. And you can watch that.
Rotem?
Last week on Office Hours is also a YouTube channel, and every episode is linked to the episode on YouTube. So it's linked together. But after hours, this is the place. Come and join us, have a talk. We are happy to talk with you.
And, we are going to do, once we get through a little bit more, we're going to do probably once a month. This was a suggestion in the second hour, but once a month, we're probably going to do a understanding office hours, like just a general question. Like it'll be a Monday, the first Monday of every month or something like that, is like just an open question for people who've just run into us and don't understand what the heck is going on, and can just ask those questions. And so that, I think that we're going to, especially as we start to open up our marketing a little bit, we have to provide a little bit more. The other thing to look at is read the materials on the website. Also, if someone can put into Mukana, the PC Magazine wrote a kind of a fun article about us that's now in. I think if someone can post that into Mukana, I think I tweeted it out. I think it might be my last tweet that I put out. I haven't tweeted it recently, so but you can read about it a little bit as well. And there's going to be some other press coming soon. But yeah, so I think but the best thing to do is ask questions. We don't mind, regardless of whether I have an ask about office hours, second hour, or whatever, we don't mind answering any question over and over and over again here. We just get better at it. So always feel free. If you don't understand why something is working or not working here, just put it into Mukana. We're here every day. And the best day to do that is Sunday. So Sunday is where we do the most. Sunday morning is where we do the most kind of philosophical discussions, where we might spend 20 minutes on a question. So that's one to take a look at. But you can ask it any day, but Sundays are usually the best. Next question.
Alex Goldner in London, UK. If OH can command income, how will the money be allocated?
The money is going to be allocated into buying gear first and executing events. I don't think that we don't currently have any need for salaried positions. So we're in a really unique situation where we actually all can be volunteer. The thing that really draws out on nonprofits is salaries. So it's like that for companies too, but salaries are a big thing. And so as we get kind of off the ground, the great thing is that we will be able to take any money that comes in and really apply it directly to things that we need. So far, it's been mostly me, to the tune of more than my wife would prefer. It's a lot of money's kind of sunk into it. A couple people have also put in a couple other things and sent me a couple things and sent other people things. And so there's a little bit of informality in that area. But as we start to pick up speed and let people work on stuff, some of it will be group things. Like I'll say, hey, I want to rent this stage, the new old ILM stage, and do an event or do a shoot. Like we want to do a shoot. We want to bring in a jib and some cameras and some stuff. And this is how much it's going to cost for us to do that. It's going to cost $2,000 for the day. It's going to cost, for the stage, it's going to cost this. And then people will either throw money in or not. If they don't throw the money in, we won't do it. so if they throw the money in, we will. So I think that, we'll do things like that a little bit. And then, we'll give people an opportunity to contribute to it. And we do have kind of a board we're putting together that'll keep track of it. I mean, I have someone that manage a treasurer that is well skilled. I'm super concerned about. The reason we haven't taken on any money is I needed a box to put it in and I needed someone to manage it. So I am very, very concerned about the processing of money, just to make sure that it doesn't become weird, or something where people feel like we're pulling stuff out of it. So I'm not going to be there won't be any salaries to start with. Everyone's volunteers, and really where the money will go, whatever money comes in, we don't know where that's going to come from yet. We'll go into buying more equipment to make office hours better, and eventually paying for there's a cost now that's starting up now that we're doing all the AWS streaming. So there'll be a couple $100 a month that we need to figure out how to cover. I'm covering it right now. So we'll, but it'll start adding up as we start to do more and more. So those kinds of things. So we'll, and we have some organizations that are interested in what we're doing. So we may get some support from that as well. Next question.
Our last question of the day comes from Douglas Carmichael. Will there ever be a Mukana team that works on Mukana as a software product?
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, from a design point of view, the coloring, the icons, the SVG files, I've made a few for Mukana. So yes, I know from a creation of some of the look and feel, that's something that we can look at.
Yeah. So one of the things we want to do is slowly make Mukana available to more organizations within our group. So if you're already kind of in some version of a leadership position within our group, we're interested in having, supporting it with Mukana. So that means you're part of one of the teams, or you're in the panel, or you're contributing regularly. I don't want to have people just randomly come in and try to have us go through the trouble of building one for them. But we are interested in folks that are already doing stuff here, because we want to test it and we want to figure it out. And so we're trying to figure that out. If we have to do it, we charge a fair amount of money because it takes a setup process to do. But we will have a team that can help skin those things, and that team is related very closely to Ken, because Ken knows how to do it, and he reduces Chris's work dramatically. The actual infrastructure of Mukana belongs to 090 and is eventually going to be part of its own thing, and there won't be any team for that. I mean, that's the one thing that doesn't really belong inside. I mean, it's a thing that I use because we have it for this, but it's used for other commercial properties within what we're doing, and so it won't be something that people are doing software development on. So anyway, that was a fun little chat. So we get into it like I don't know if people are gonna be interested, but I think I thought about doing it on a Sunday, but I really felt like there's a lot of people that will be interested in just watching it and just kind of getting a sense of what we're doing and where we're going with it. Go ahead, John.
My bird would like to be on the hardware recycling team to take keys off of keyboards and eat wires.
I don't know if that's hardware recycling or just hardware cycling. It just decides the the office hours disassembling team is there. I have a cat that we have a cat that is probably very similar to your bird. I have this infrastructure with these moving blankets. And there's a seam where one moving blanket ends and another one begins, like 10 feet up, or not 8 feet up. And yesterday during the show, I looked over and the cat's head was sticking out of it, looking at me. It's like a 6-month-old cat sitting there looking at me. And I was like, oh no, I have no idea how that cat's going to get down. And I have like glass under, in something behind it, and it almost created a lot of mess that would have meant that I can't go barefoot for a long time in my own office. So I was concerned. But yeah, animals. All right. So thanks for having that conversation. I think that as we keep on moving forward, we're going to keep on doing more check-ins, at least for the next couple of months as we kind of figure this stuff out and figure out how it's going to go. We're about to go through these kind of turns are the most concerning. It's easy to keep on going the same way. We start making changes, things start to rattle. And so just so you know, I'm paying attention. So I'm concerned. I'm definitely paying attention to the ball a lot right now because of these pivots are both exciting, but sometimes in a Chinese curse sort of way. so the may you live in exciting times. And but thank you for being patient, and thank you for being part of the conversation, part of the community. Thanks for all the great questions from the producers. Those were perfect, and it was really good. And thanks to the panelists for being part of this conversation and contributing your knowledge back to everyone. It really makes a difference. All right, and tomorrow we'll be talking about audio in the Atem and what it's good for and what it's not, and how to use it. And so stay tuned for that. And right now we're going to jump into